Today from the global lane. At the UN, a different tone from Trump on North Korea. We'll tell you why he needs to act now or risk losing a deal with Kim Jong Un. Populism and the midterm election. Without Trump on the ballot, will the revolution fizzle out? Cosby sentenced, Kavanaugh accused. The growing influence of #MeToo. Are men now guilty until proven innocent? And some thoughts on how to heal if you've been abused. And it's all right here, right now, from the global lane. As expected, President Donald Trump mentioned North Korea during his speech before the United Nations General Assembly. His tone this year was quite a bit different than 1 year ago. Last year, the president called Kim Jong Un Rocket Man, and North Korea a depraved nation, one the United States could totally destroy. Well, this time, just 3 months after his historic meeting with Kim Jong Un in Singapore, he said this about progress with North Korea.
The missiles and rockets are no longer flying in every direction. Nuclear testing has stopped. Some military facilities are already being dismantled. Our hostages have been released, and as promised, the remains of our fallen heroes are being returned home to lay at rest in American soil. I would like to thank Chairman Kim for his courage and for the steps he has taken, though much work remains to be done. The sanctions will stay in place until denuclearization occurs.
Joining us with reaction to the president's speech and some insights on U.S. policy on North Korea is Harry Kazianis. He's Director of Defense Studies at the Center for the National Interest. So, Harry, tell us, what did you think of the president's remarks about North Korea? Any surprises?
I think it's a big contrast from last year. If you recall that the president was talking about, potentially totally destroying North Korea if North Korea attacked U.S. allies or the United States homeland. He talked about, a lot of issues that really got to the core of the North Korean nuclear crisis. And I think for the president now, he's come a long way. He's had a summit with Kim Jong Un. He's convinced the North Koreans not to test any more nuclear weapons or any more ICBMs. And that is progress.
Why isn't Kim Jong Un more forthcoming about giving specifics of his nuclear program? Is it simply a lack of trust? What is it, Harry?
Yeah, both sides don't trust each other. And I'm not surprised by that. We have to remember the United States and North Korea have no relationship. Even if you go back to the darkest days of the Cold War, say the early 1980s, at least the Soviets and the United States, even though the relationship wasn't great, there was a relationship. So I know a lot of people are looking for there to be instant progress when it comes to North Korea, for maybe Kim Jong Un to just give up all his nuclear weapons. I think history shows that countries that have nuclear weapons or very powerful arsenals just don't trade them in at a whim's notice.
Is President Trump overly optimistic about Kim's sincerity, maybe even a bit naive about the possibility that Kim may be playing him?
Well, the president likes to take a very personal approach when it comes to world leaders. I mean, despite the trade war we have with China, even President Trump is still very complimentary to Xi Jinping, which is sort of weird, but that is the Trump sort of doctrine. I think we're closer to a deal with North Korea than we probably ever had been, but this is where it's going to get tough. This is where both sides are going to have to make some hard compromises. I don't see Kim Jong Un just giving up all his nuclear weapons and then, the end of that process, then getting economic, concessions or sanctions lifted. I think what the North Koreans are looking for is essentially they give up something, they get something. And if you look at history, I think that's a formula that can work. So I think where this ends up happening is there is going to be a Trump-Kim summit. I do see President Trump trying to offer a peace declaration in exchange for Kim Jong Un making a big down payment on denuclearization. And there's also one other big factor here that we have to consider that's extremely important. The maximum pressure campaign on North Korea is going to start to fade in the next few months. With the United States and China locked into a trade war, we have to remember China is the one that actually enforces maximum pressure. 90% of North Korea's exports go through China, and China is not going to back maximum pressure anymore. In fact, they're going to use it as a bargaining chip in this whole process. So if President Trump is going to strike a deal on North Korea, this is when he's going to get the best terms. Anytime after that, it's going to get a lot harder.
So more on China. Specifically, how is Trump's trade dispute with China affecting the Korea negotiations?
Oh, it's a huge impact on this because, like I said, the maximum pressure campaign, China's not going to enforce it. If you speak to any Chinese scholar, anybody who's close to the government, they will tell you that Beijing is looking for ways to strike back at the United States. And the easiest way to do that is to basically let North Korea have a free hand, to weaken all the restrictions on the border, to just forget about the whole maximum pressure campaign. And one thing I'd point to that's extremely important is that there's a lot of talk about the United States Navy or other countries going out and stopping all these, ship-to-ship oil transfers. Well, guess what? Almost all of the oil that goes into North Korea comes from one pipeline, comes from China, and that's 90% of North Korea's oil. All that China has to do is open up the taps and maximum pressure is toast.
The president's already preparing for a second meeting with Kim Jong Un. So what does he need to accomplish in his second meeting?
I think there will be some sort of partial lifting if the North Koreans make a big step. I think the president is probably on a little bit different page than some of his advisors like Mike Pompeo or Nikki Haley or John Bolton. I think the president has a little bit softer approach. And I always go back to when North Korean officials this spring came to New York and then came to the White House. As soon as that meeting was over, Donald Trump actually dropped the whole idea of CVID, or the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. He softened his approach a little bit to get that summit with Kim. I think he's going to do that again. But what he's going to be looking for is concessions from Kim. This president is willing to go a long way to make peace with North Korea, but he does not want to get played. So if there's going to be a summit, he needs to be reassured by Kim that Kim is willing to come to the table. One way to do that is maybe to have this summit in Seoul with Moon Jae-in, the president of South Korea there, essentially acting as a goodwill arbiter between both sides. And who knows, with all three countries present, maybe you could make some history and end the Korean War and do it right before the midterms. This way, President Trump can say to the American people, not only do I keep my promises, but I'm the president that ended the Korean War. That's legacy, and that's history.
Okay, Harry Katsianis of the Center for the National Interest, thank you for joining us.
Cool. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless his people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledge that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Populist revolution. Is that what Americans voted for when they elected Donald Trump 2 years ago, or something else? He's definitely rejected globalism in favor of American nationalism. Many people say his policies have helped provide for more jobs for American workers. So is this president a populist or a pragmatist? Will the populist wave of the 2016 presidential election carry into the upcoming midterm election? Well, joining us is Steve Hilton. He's host of the Fox News program The Next Revolution and author of the newly released book, Positive Populism. Steve, thanks for joining us. First, in your book, you talked about the elite of both political parties, how they were shocked when Trump won. So What didn't they get about the populist wave that swept Donald Trump into the White House?
I think the main thing that was missed was the fact that for many decades now, irrespective of who has won actual elections, you've had the same policy agenda driven forward, which was basically enthusiastic about globalization, automation in the economy, centralization of government, and uncontrolled immigration. And all those things benefited the people at the top. They did really well out of it. So their lives were great. And that's why I think they missed it. What they didn't see was that working Americans were losing out. And the people who actually do the hard work and hope to benefit, they were missing out. And that had been going on for a long time. And they missed that. And therefore, they didn't understand just how angry people had gotten about the fact that whether they voted Republican or Democrat, nothing ever seemed to change. The rich got richer and their lives seemed to get worse.
Well, I think some people would say Trump is an elitist himself. After all, he is a billionaire. So how is he different, Steve, from other wealthy, powerful people?
I think that there's a really important difference. I'm so glad you asked that question because it goes to the heart of this. There's a difference between the elite and elitism. Elitism is, in my view, an ideology of the kind of policies I was explaining, the globalism and so on. It's a policy agenda, elitism, that benefits the elite. You can be in the elite, a member of it, and reject elitism. I frankly would put myself in that same position too. Now, I have a show on Fox News. I think that puts me firmly in the elite, but I care about this positive populist agenda, which I think President Trump just was at the beginning of this movement. And what I'm trying to do with my book is say, okay, how do we now take that revolution, that populist revolution that was expressed in the 2016 election and turn it into real lasting change, a real movement for change with positive ideas for how to rebuild economic security and family and community in America. Those are the things I think are at the heart of this is people's economic security, family and community. And I think that's what positive populism for me is all about.
And it isn't just here. It's in Great Britain. Donald Trump supported, and I'm sure he would even say predicted, the positive vote for Britain to leave the European Union, Brexit. Now there's a push by some Brits to vote on Brexit again. Is the populist movement there fizzling out?
Well, it's a really interesting what's going on, and it really mirrors what's happening here too, in the sense that the people who have had power for so long, the people in the elitists, if you like, who are in positions of power, not just the politicians, but the permanent bureaucracy, what we've now started to call the deep state, big corporations who are very closely connected. They hated the fact that they lost power in 2016, both in the presidential election here, but also in terms of the Brexit vote, where you had all of the alliance of the elitists against Brexit, but it went through anyway. Now they're trying to get that power back. In the UK, they're trying to undermine Brexit and overturn that result. And we see here in America, they're doing exactly the same thing. You see it with all the reporting of the way that the people around Donald Trump and throughout the bureaucracy trying to undermine and sabotage his agenda. That anonymous op-ed in the New York Times. And just now with Rod Rosenstein, recently, one after another, almost daily, you're seeing evidence of the elitists trying to undermine that result. Now, the difference is that here you've got someone at the top, Donald Trump, who really believes in it and is trying to push it through. Whereas in the UK, Prime Minister Theresa May, remember, was against Brexit. She's now leading a government that's trying to make it happen, but she actually campaigned against it. So the reason it may be somewhat fizzling out is that you don't have that strong populist movement pushing it forward.
Well, so then what do you think is going to happen in the UK and then here, back across the pond, this populist wave that swept Trump into office? We're going to see the push continue in the upcoming midterm, or is it fizzling out both in the UK and here?
No, I don't think it's fizzling out here, because if the people who voted for Donald Trump, and also remember that populism is not just a phenomenon on the right, you see it also on the left with Bernie Sanders, support for him in the 2016 campaign. And so I think working Americans generally want really big change. Now, the reason I've written this book, Positive Populism, is to contribute to the growth of a movement that last beyond one election cycle, even beyond one presidential campaign and one presidency. And so you get people who understand what it means to have a policy agenda that is pro-worker, pro-family, and pro-community. And people are elected all throughout our system to push those ideas forward. That's exactly what I'm hoping to happen, that this populist revolution, that this spark that happened, then actually turns into a lasting movement for the long term.
Steve Hilton, we love your show on Fox News. You're a host and author of the book Positive Populism. We thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
We had 4 jobs that didn't go right. But, we didn't waver in our faith.
That's when God put on my heart that we needed to do the well.
Within a couple of days, we got an insurance refund check that we had no idea was coming.
And here we are, this year, it's just boom.
You go out and help other people, and you get rewarded for it.
Get Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Miraculous Blessings.
The hashtag #MeToo movement has sent its first celebrity to jail. Police took actor-comedian Bill Cosby into custody after he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison for sexually assaulting a woman at his home in 2004. Judge Stephen O'Neill classified Cosby as a sexual violent predator. That means he'll be on a sex offender registry after he's released from prison someday. But what about other men accused of sexual misconduct by women who have joined the hashtag #MeToo movement? Yes, many men are probably guilty, but others may be innocent. Are we entering an era where someone is considered guilty without due process? Well, joining us to provide some perspective on that and what may be happening to American culture is Katie Yoder. Ms. Yoder is Associate Culture Editor for the Media Research Center's Newsbusters. So, Katie, is this now a trend, guilty until proven innocent? What is happening?
Well, it sure seems like a trend with the media. You look at, for example, The View. Joy Behar said that Kavanaugh is probably guilty already. And CNN and MSNBC have even made comparisons between Cosby and Kavanaugh. He was found guilty beyond reasonable doubt. He had 60 accusers. That's very different from Kavanaugh right now, where the details are still being figured out. These are accusations. So it's certainly a trend in the media. We actually published a study today about how the 3 broadcast networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, during their morning and evening news shows, they spent nearly 6 hours on the allegations against Kavanaugh, and only 8% of that was spent on his denial. So, it's a huge discrepancy there, and we need to remember we need to hear both sides. Of course, women should be considered and heard and taken seriously, but so should the people who are accused. And Me Too, the movement, was jump-started by the media. It was at the beginning, it very much brought together people on both sides of the political spectrum. It was something that had the potential to unite women. But I think what we're seeing here is that it's starting to become, it's become political, and women are becoming divided over Me Too now. It's hard to know exactly why this is happening. I think Me Too is definitely being used as a part of this. It's being used as a political weapon in a way. We see the media using it as that. So I think it's important to recognize that. And I think, Me Too has emboldened women rightfully to come forward, but the way the media are using it now to assume that someone's guilty, they need to be careful about that and cautious about that. It should be innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven guilty. Even if, and they might not be proven guilty, you don't know. So the media need to be cautious about this. This is a problem.
But what about some others other than Brett Kavanaugh?
Well, I would say Kavanaugh seems to be the main one right now. It's, we don't want to discredit people who haven't been accused yet. I will say, though, that I've noticed a huge trend here with Me Too and other women's movements. For example, the Women's March, that had the potential to bring women together on both sides. Women wanted, with various backgrounds, with different beliefs, wanted to come together and march together. And then pro-life women were uninvited as groups to the Women's March. So I would say in that example, that's another example of how this movement could have been used to bring women together. And instead, it's become more political and it's dividing women.
Well, I know even with the Catholic Church now and some of the revelations of priests that abused boys. So it isn't just women, but I want to point out, you're not saying that women who come forward should not be taken seriously, right?
Oh, no. Women who come forward with accusations, they should absolutely be heard and considered. We want to make that case, absolutely. We just shouldn't come to the conclusion automatically because of an accusation that someone is guilty. And that's what the media are doing here in the case of Kavanaugh. Both sides should be heard, and in this case, the media are very heavily only telling one side.
And unfortunately, I think, Katie, we're in a society where sex sells, at least on television and throughout the media. So what needs to be done? How do we protect abused women, but also innocent men?
Well, I think in regards to the media need to be conscious of telling both sides. And if Americans see only one-sided media, then they need to go to other sources for their news. And maybe that's, social media, seeing what people are saying on social media. Try to get the full story. We need to demand accountability from the media in this case as well to get the full story out. So don't just look at one news source, look at multiple news sources for this.
Well, we appreciate that you're there monitoring it, and I guess maybe a little more fairness, a little more even-handedness by the media. As you said with Kavanaugh, it's been way out of whack there, has it not? Okay, yeah. Katie Yoder of Newsbusters, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
With all the uproar between the left and right over the Brett Kavanaugh nomination, I felt I had to share some thoughts about the hashtag #MeToo movement. Yes, it's gotten to the point where accusers now are automatically believed. Those accused are guilty. And that's not the American way. In this country, we believe in due process, that a person is innocent until proven guilty. Despite that trend, hashtag #MeToo has created some positives for our society. It has emboldened women to overcome their trauma and pain by speaking out. For far too long, many have suffered in silence. Many still do. Hashtag #MeToo claimed its first success in Hollywood with the conviction and jailing of actor-comedian Bill Cosby. Of course, many other prominent celebrities and politicians accused of sexual misconduct have not stood trial, but some have resigned from office, like Senator Al Franken and Congressman John Conyers. Judge Roy Moore lost an election because of sexual misconduct allegations against him. And Hollywood film mogul Harvey Weinstein is facing criminal charges and civil lawsuits from numerous women on charges of sexual assault, rape, and even sex trafficking. And now, because of 36-year-old allegations against Judge Brett Kavanaugh, a new movement is here. It's called hashtag #WhyIDidn'tReport. It's women explaining why they kept their abuse private or secret for years. Christian evangelist Beth Moore recently explained in a tweet, "He lived in my house." Another person tweeted, "Because I was a child and threatened into silence." Like hashtag #MeToo, hashtag #WhyIDidn'tReport is a movement that encourages women to break the chains of silence and fear. A first step in overcoming the past and embracing a new hope for the future. But folks, we have to be careful not to rush to judgment against the accused. We know for whatever reason, some people make false accusations. And without witnesses coming forward with credible evidence or testimony, a lot of past abuse is difficult to prove or disprove, and the truth may never come to light. So if you're a woman or a man who's experienced any type of abuse, I encourage you to tell someone. Disclosure is the first step in healing. Then pray for God's justice to prevail and learn to forgive others. Those are big steps in overcoming the wrong that has been done against you. The Bible also reminds us in Zechariah chapter 7, verse 9, to administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. Later in verse 10, do not plot evil against each other. So if you've been abused, don't respond to evil with evil. Have courage to share your story with someone. Speak the truth. But don't forget to show mercy and compassion as you pursue godly justice. Well, that's it from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.